J.K. Dobbins left Denver yesterday without a deal from Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos. So what does it mean about the future of this running back room? And should Denver's front office kick the tires on some other available backs ahead of the 2025 season? Plus, we got a little bit of an inkling from Russell Westbrook about what he plans to do with his future in the NBA and potentially with the Denver Nuggets. All things we will get into on today's rundown, and we will begin in the NFL, where the big story of the day yesterday was J.K. Dobbins arriving at Broncos facility, spending a couple of days with Sean Payton, George Payton, Bo Lowry, the strength and conditioning coach, and other members of the staff observing Broncos OTA practice yesterday and presumably discussing the potential for a contract to be signed here in Denver. Dobbins is currently coming off of a year with the Los Angeles Chargers, where despite missing about a month due to an MCL strain, he was fairly productive. Had 1,000 scrimmage yards in total between rushing and receiving and 9 touchdowns in the game he was healthy. And in a run-friendly, run-heavy offense like Jim Harbaugh's in L.A., changed the dynamic of the way that team looked when he was there versus when he was not. So clearly a guy that, despite struggling with pretty significant major injury history throughout his youngish career in the NFL, has tread on the tires and gas in the tank to be able to try to make an impact. Now, he's got a tender situation contract-wise with the LA Chargers where he can return to them to the tune of about $3 to $3.5 million a year. So any contract outside of LA would likely have to exceed that number, both in years and in guaranteed money. So if we're looking at $3 million LA, that could mean anywhere from $4 to $5 million a year in Denver or anywhere else that he would like to sign. Is that too rich for your blood? Is that too rich for Sean Payton and George Payton's blood? I don't know. But it's possible because J.K. Dobbins left those discussions without a deal and presumably is on to other visits or other phases of his offseason preparation. And traditionally speaking, in free agency, when you want someone and you bring them into your facility in your building, the old adage is you don't really want to let them leave without signing pen to paper. We saw that happen with Emmanuel Sanders' arrival in Denver, where he was visiting with the Kansas City Chiefs, who wanted him desperately and were trying everything they could to get to avoid letting him leave the building without a contract situation. Emmanuel Sanders hilariously fakes a stomach illness and the need to use the bathroom and gets out of there, gets on a plane, comes to Denver, and the rest is history in terms of his tenure as a Denver Bronco. That does not happen with J.K. Dobbins. It's important to note that Evan Ingram also visited earlier in the free agency cycle when things were still a little bit hot, but not necessarily in that first wave. Evan Ingram visited the Broncos, did the song and dance, toured the facility, talked with the coaches, blah, 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 and left. And it was circled back a little bit later that he did end up signing. So it's not impossible that a deal with J.K. Dobbins is not coming in the near days as we inch closer and closer to mandatory minicamp, training camp, and the like. But the likelihood that J.K. Dobbins, because of Denver Bronco, is less so and is not necessarily imminent now that he has left the building without a deal. And the question that I have now is, what does this mean for the future of the Broncos running back room? And is the Broncos running back room complete enough heading into the 2025 season to feel comfortable about the goals and expectations that the Broncos have set forth for themselves and that we as media and fans have set forth for them in our own minds? I'm going to come out and say right now, I think the answer to that question is no. I don't think there was anything inspiring or confidence-bringing about this running back room last season when it was Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Audric Estime, with Tyler Bidet and Blake Watson kind of being fringe pieces along the edges there. And just swapping out Javonte Williams for R.J. Harvey, who they drafted out of UCF in the second round of this past draft, does that present an upside or an upgrade potentially? Yes, I think so, because it was clear Javonte Williams, in terms of his use in the Broncos offense, had lost a step and was pretty ineffective outside of pass blocking and catching out of the backfield. But we don't know what R.J. Harvey's going to become in the NFL or at the NFL level. And he presents potentially similar downsides to a guy like Jaleel McLaughlin, who's an undersized, shifty, speed back type of player who's dynamic in terms of his playmaking ability, but inconsistent in the delivery of that playmaking. So we don't know whether or not Audric Estime is going to be able to take that next step. He was given confidence by Sean Payton, and presumably Sean banged the table to draft Audric Estime out of Notre Dame in the 5th round of last year's draft, but struggled with ball security issues, was shown confidence in the game against Kansas City and others where he was given significant carries and touches in late game, gotta-have-it situation moments, but then doesn't even get a jersey in the wild card playoff game against Buffalo. So it's a very roller coaster tale with him. And Jaleel McLaughlin, we know basically what we've known about him the last season, which is that he has playmaking ability. He has the ability to have burst and be explosive and make plays on the edges and in open space. But his undersized nature makes it difficult for him to get 3-down work to be able to get those opportunities. And when he did get extended advanced opportunities later in the season, he didn't capitalize on them to the degree that we would have hoped. And I don't think that he would have hoped. That's why they drafted R.J. Harvey in the first place. So just because Javonte Williams is replaced and R.J. Harvey is there, that by no means, in my opinion, means this running back room is ready to go, locked and loaded. And I think that the fact Sean Payton brought in J.K. Dobbins for a visit this late in free agency, as we've already begun organized team activities and mini camp is right around the corner, shows you that they're not 100% happy and convinced with their room at that position at this time. And so could a deal with J.K. Dobbins be coming in the future? Yes. But J.K. Dobbins could also just go back to the Chargers, or he could go meet with another team who's willing to maybe offer things that the Broncos may not have been. And so now the question becomes, should Sean Payton kick the tires on other running backs? When asked about the visit with J.K. Dobbins, Sean Payton said, quote, "Another good football player that we've seen firsthand. I've seen him for a while, and just the importance of that position group. We really like the group right now we're working with. It's just another opportunity to possibly bring in another good football player to help us win." I think that's talking a little bit out of both sides of your mouth there, Sean. No disrespect. If you really, really like the room that you have, you wouldn't be going out of your way right now to bring in a 4th guy to throw into that mix, in my opinion. And then the question of other outside running backs, if you look at the list of running backs that are still available, there are still some names out there. J.K. Dobbins, the aforementioned, but a guy like Nick Chubb, who was once dominating the AFC from the running back position with the Cleveland Browns. Gus Edwards, who was a backmate of J.K. Dobbins throughout stops of his career. Cam Akers, who miraculously came back from that Achilles injury with the LA Rams and helped them make a run toward a Super Bowl. Jamal Williams and Jeff Wilson. Amir Abdullah, the former Nebraska back. And then guys like Zeke Elliott and D'Ernest Johnson kind of on the fringes there. So if Sean Payton is bringing in somebody like J.K. Dobbins at this stage of the season, that tells me, I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to say that they are interested in upgrading and adding at that position, and therefore are not as satisfied with it as they should be, or maybe as Sean is implying in his press conference yesterday when he was asked about J.K. Dobbins. So if that's the case, then why not bring in a guy like Nick Chubb, who's still sitting out there floating around the open market for a similar style of visit? What do you have to lose if you're the Broncos to kick the tires on another guy like that, who has dealt with injuries recently, as J.K. Dobbins has, but when healthy has proven to be an electric running back and somebody that fits a 3-down mold, that has a big physical presence but can still make plays in space, and has the track record and the history on the NFL stage of making the plays that no one in the Broncos running back room could make last year, as Zach Bye likes to pound the table and remind everyone that no Broncos running back had a single carry in hundreds and hundreds, I believe it was north of 400 attempts, of 22 yards or more last season. Well, a guy like J.K. Dobbins, a guy like Nick Chubb, they present just as much, if not more, of an opportunity than most of the players you currently have in the room. So I don't know that I would expect the Broncos to do that, because you never know how things are going to progress with offseason training and programming as they get more eyes on things. But I would not fault, nor would I be raising an eyebrow if the Broncos were to kick the tires on another running back and bring somebody like that in for another visit. We will see probably at the start of next week as conversations will begin to roll. Our guy Mike Kliss said that while Dobbins did leave the building without an imminent deal, that he remains on the Broncos' radar, and you can parse through the words of what that might mean in terms of ongoing negotiations or the potential for a circle back at some point if there's just another visit on the calendar that Dobbins and his camp want to check off. In the NBA, we got a little bit of Nuggets news from the number one newsbreaker on the Denver Nuggets roster, and that is Russell Westbrook. He took to his newsletter just a handful of weeks ago to let the entire world know that he's having surgery to repair a hand-wrist injury that was plaguing him during the postseason. He scooped all the reporters on that, and the team and others had to circle back in order to address that situation. And now, via his social media account, Russell Westbrook has given a hint at his future in the NBA and potentially with the Denver Nuggets. He posted on Instagram a photo of himself in a Nuggets uniform, and the caption says, quote, "I am a force of nature. 17 in the books. Thankful and grateful for the continued journey. 18 on the way. Signed, the Brody." Such a Russell Westbrook level post, starting with the first sentence of calling himself, again, a force of nature, which, when you look at the Russell Westbrook experience from start to finish, is pretty damn accurate in terms of describing just what it feels like to watch him when he's a member of your organization. 17, obviously referring to his 17 years in the NBA, and 18 on the way as a part of the continued journey. So Russell Westbrook certainly has a plan on playing in the NBA in his 18th season. Then the question becomes, does he pick up his $3.5 million player option with the Nuggets, or does he decline that to either negotiate a bigger deal with Denver or test the waters in free agency and join yet another team, which would be his fifth or sixth in the better part of the last decade? That is an interesting question, because we did get some reports overseas that in terms of European basketball, Russell Westbrook was drawing interest from Euro leagues and Israeli leagues in basketball. Nemanja Zoric, a European basketball reporter, reported that Hapoel Tel Aviv has made initial contract with former NBA All-Star Russell Westbrook. I'm told the Euro Cup champions are planning to make him an offer with a salary never before seen in European basketball. Russell Westbrook, obviously a former MVP, a former All-Star, searching for his first NBA championship, but someone who is going to do a cakewalk into the National Basketball Association Hall of Fame one day. So it's no surprise that a European basketball league or a smaller upstart type of league would be interested, even overseas, in a player of Russell Westbrook's caliber, despite the criticism we may have for him here. But my guess would be that that reporting was credible, and Russell Westbrook's post on Instagram implies to me that he plans on playing in the NBA for another season, his 18th of his career. So shutting down maybe the option of going outside of the league to continue his basketball career, as aging players are often want to do. And then it comes to signing with the Denver Nuggets. And I will say this: when it comes to Russell Westbrook, what we saw in the regular season and what we saw in the postseason were two different things. In the regular season, he developed some genuine chemistry with Nikola Jokic, and his presence, as inefficient at times and erratic at times as it may be, was genuinely a boon and a lift to the Nuggets as they dealt with injuries, as they dealt with depth concerns and inconsistency in their starting rotation, to help keep the Nuggets afloat, to maintain a top 4 seed in the Western Conference and host a home playoff game in the first round of the NBA playoffs. Now, when it got to the postseason, and it's not game to game to game, to opponent to opponent to opponent, and teams like the Clippers and the Thunder were able to hone in more specifically on the Nuggets starting rotation and on Russell Westbrook's deficiencies, a lot of that play devolved, as we saw it with the Clippers, the Lakers, the Rockets, the Thunder, etc., prior to Russ's coming to Denver. So I acknowledge fully that those two parts of the experience, the yin and the yang, the agent of chaos that is Russell Westbrook, it was different. But I don't think, given the limited ability that the Nuggets have to try to make moves, I don't necessarily think that the Nuggets right off the bat are worse with Russell Westbrook picking up that player option than they are. You could say if he turns down his $3.5 million player option, it frees up cash and space for them to go make moves. And I would defer to the likes of Jake Shapiro and others here on our staff who live in the trade machine and have the options and put the breakdowns on DenverSports.com about what they could potentially do with that money. But we do know how inflexible the Nuggets are, given where they're at with the apron situation and the fact that they have 82% of their salary tied up into their core four players of Jokic, Murray, MPJ, and Aaron Gordon. So I think there's a reasonable argument to be made that the Nuggets aren't necessarily better off without Russell Westbrook versus with him. But in order to succeed and maybe get past the second round, where they arguably should have gotten, even with the vaunted Oklahoma City Thunder, is to have to rely on Russell Westbrook less than they did. And that comes with a year of development for Julian Strawther, for Jalen Pickett, potentially a year of introductory level play for a guy like Deron Holmes to be able to add another big man into the rotation and provide some of the starters, including Jokic, with more rest. I think that potentially, if you're relying on Russell Westbrook less, that is a better situation to have him on the roster than just having him decline the player option entirely and try to fill that void with another veteran player. Certainly a polarizing enough player to be able to debate that or speculate whether or not that's true. That is just as I sit here on June 6th, 2025, where my gut is at right now, given the inflexibility that the Nuggets have to go out and acquire other players. We will see how it all shakes out, and I would assume a decision from Russell Westbrook on that front could be coming in the semi-near future as the NBA offseason is about to start, with the NBA Finals in full swing, as the Indiana Pacers steal game one on another Tyrese Halliburton shot, his fourth consecutive series with a bizarre game-winning shot and a comeback in the final 3 minutes of regulation or overtime of a postseason NBA game. So a lot of excitement there in that series. The Stanley Cup final between Edmonton and Florida, the rematch continues. Edmonton rallies back from a 3-1 deficit to take game one against the Florida Panthers. We'll see how the rest of it shakes out in game two this week. And we will be here to chronicle all of the action from over the weekend on DenverSports.com, on DenverSports 104.3 The Fan, and on our digital shows here like The Rundown all day, every day, 24/7. We'll catch you on Monday.